Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another tutorial. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to draft the pattern for this trendy double-breasted blazer dress with an exaggerated short collar, cut out back design with puff sleeves. Now if this sounds good to you and it's something you're interested in, then please keep watching this video. And if you're coming across my channel for the very first time, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button. And to my returning subscribers, thank you for coming back. Now with that being said guys, let's just get right into this video. So we are going to be starting with the front bodies, and I have the pattern paper here as you can see. Now at the topmost part of the paper, I came down 5 inches before I ruled my shoulder line. The 5-inch space is for the shawl collar extension. So now on the center front line right there, I also came out 4 inches for the extension because this is going to be a double-breasted blazer dress, remember. So I came out by 4 inches. You can come out 3.5 inches, 3 inches depending on what you want. Now after doing that, I also came out an extra 4 inches again because of the drawing of this exaggerated shawl collar. That is why I left about 8 inches after the center front line right there. Now from the shoulder line, I came down 11 inches for my bust point, and I also came down 15 inches for the under bust line. Now this is totally optional. You might not want to impute your under bust. You might just want to draw a straight waist dart, but I want to give my dress a kind of a bustier look. That is why I drew my under bust line. I'll prefer you to just draw your under bust line to give it a more fitted look. Now after that, I came down 17 inches for my waistline. And after doing that, I also came down for the hip line right there. And then the rest of the paper is just basically going to be the hem line or the length of this gown. If you want yours longer, you can just use a longer pattern paper for your dress, okay? And guys, I need you to pay attention to this pattern drafting because it's kind of a little bit complicated. But if you pay attention, you're going to get it just fine. So now the next thing that I'm going to do is to impute my half of shoulder measurement from the center front line right there, which is 8 inches. The total of my shoulder being 16 inches. Now I'm going to be extending the length of that shoulder because it's going to be a cut together sleeve with the shoulder. In other words, it's going to be a cut together shoulder and sleeve. There will be no joining for the sleeve. It's going to be all together. So I'm going to be adding an extra 10.5 inches to the shoulder length, which will make the total 18.5 from the center front line. If you want yours longer, that is the sleeve, you can just extend the paper or join the paper to make it longer. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be making the total of the sleeve 10.5 inches. I hope you understand. Now after getting that out of the way, it's time to measure our neckline on the shoulder line. So for the width, I'm going to be coming out by 3.5 inches, and then for the depth, I'm also going to be coming out by 3.5 inches, as you can see. So I'm just going to connect these 2 points together using my curved ruler. Now after drawing the neckline with my pencil, I'll also be using my marker for better visibility. The next thing to do is to draw the shoulder slope from this extended sleeve length that we have right here. So I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope, as you can see. So I'll just go ahead and do that because that is going to serve as our new shoulder slope. So I'll be connecting it from that point to the neckline. So I'm just going to take my ruler and connect from the new shoulder slope to the neckline like so. First with my pencil, and then I'll go ahead and use marker for better visibility. So the next thing to do is to place our dart on this pattern, and I'm going to be using my nipple to nipple measurement for reference. My nipple to nipple measurement is 9 inches, divided by 2 gives me 4.5. So from the center front line, I'm going to be marking 4.5 inches across on the bust line, on the under bust line, on the waistline, on the hip line, and also on the hem line. So I'm just going to do that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to connect all these points together using my straight ruler. And then I'll just complete this using my marker. The next thing to do is to come down 1 inch from the bust point, as you can see. Now on the under bust line, I'm going to be coming out by 0.75 inches on both sides. I will also be repeating the same thing on the waistline, coming out by 0.75. You can come out by 1 inch if you want. I will also repeat the same thing on the hip line and also on the hem line. And then we'll be connecting all these points together with a ruler, first with the pencil and then with the marker. Now the next thing to do is to use my curved ruler to connect from the 1 inch I came down by from the bust point to the under bust line, as you can see. Next thing to do is to place our round bust measurement on the bust line, and I'm going to be dividing my round bust measurement by 4, and then I'll be placing what I have on the bust line right there. Now the next thing to do is to find a way to connect our sleeves to our bust measurement. Now the sleeve circumference that I'm going to be making use of is 14 inches. Divided by 2 will give me 7, so that is what I'm marking right there as the width of my sleeve circumference. So I'm just going to be connecting these points together with my ruler. That's 7 inches. If you want it wider, you can use 8 inches, depending on how loose or how fitted you want the mouth of your sleeve to be. So I'm making use of 14 inches for the round circumference, and I divided it by 2. Now from that point on the bust area, I'm just going to be using my hand to kind of draw a curved line to meet the width of my sleeve. I hope you understand. So you just use your pencil or your marker to connect these points together, to kind of give it a smooth transition from the bust point to the sleeve circumference. So I'm just going to be using my marker for better visibility at this point. The next thing to do is to complete the side seam, and I'm going to be placing the waist measurement on the waistline plus the dart intake that we took. I'm going to be adding that back. Then I'll also repeat the same process for the hip line. I'll also be adding the dart on the hip line as well. And then I'll go over to the hemline and repeat the same process. Then I'm going to be joining the side seam first with my pencil, and then I'll go ahead and use marker for better visibility. The next thing to do is to determine the break point, or where the shawl fold is going to be starting from. So I'm going to be using my under bust line as where I want the break point to start from. You can decide wherever you want your break point to start from, but I'm just going to measure down where the under bust line is, and then I'll just mark that, which is 15 inches from the shoulder line. So I came down 15 inches for the break point. Now I'm just going to connect the line together from the extension to the center front line. I'll just use my marker to complete this line. Now after doing that, the next thing to do is to connect from the break point to the high shoulder point right there. So it's going to be a slanted line, so I'm just going to be connecting it. Just watch what I'm doing. After getting that out of the way, the next thing we are going to be doing is drawing the style line that connects from the underarm to a part of the neckline. So I'm just going to be marking 3 inches round the neckline like so. Now for this line, you can go slightly higher or lower, but I'm going to be using 3 inches for the sake of this tutorial. So after marking the 3 inches, we are going to be connecting it to the underarm in a kind of an arc way, a curved way. So I'll be using my free hand to just connect it to the underarm like so. If you check the picture of this outfit, you will see that there's a style line, there's a joining from the neck to the underarm. That is what we are trying to achieve here. So I'm just going to be using my marker for better visibility. So after doing that, we are going to be cutting the sleeve and shoulder out from the style line that we just drew. So as the video progresses, we are going to be seeing more of that. The next thing to do is to move over to the back pattern. Now for the back pattern, you can see it's entirely similar to what we did at the front, except it doesn't have any extension, just the center back line right there. So I came out 8 inches for the shoulder length, half of the shoulder, plus 10.5 inches extra for the sleeve. I came down 1 inch for the shoulder slope, as you can see. For the neck width and depth, I used 3.5 by 1.5 respectively, and connected the two parts together. Then I connected the shoulder slope and then the sleeve. The same thing I did for the front is what I did on the back pattern, guys. Nothing is different here. Just like the front, I came down for the bust line right there. I also came down for the waistline, the hip line, and the M line. The back pattern does not have an under bust. Now if you want to extend the length of this blazer, you can just add more paper to the M line. Now on the bust line, I placed my bust circumference divided by 4. I marked it, and then I connected it to the circumference of the sleeve, just like we did for the front. Remember, it's going to be a cut together sleeve. So after doing that, I also came out half an inch on both sides for the waist dart using my nipple to nipple measurement. I did that on the waistline, the hip line, and also on the M line, and I connected these points together. So I connected from the M line all the way to the waistline, and then all the way to the bust line like so. And after doing that, I just went ahead to complete the side seam. And if you want to change the shape of your blazer, if you want it to be flare or A shape, you can just add more inches to the hemline and then connect to the waist like so. Then you get your more defined A line blazer gown. The next thing we want to do is also draw the style line that we did on the front pattern on the back from the neckline to the underarm. So I'm going to be measuring about 2 inches on the neckline right there. You know, we measured 3 inches on the front. So here we'll just go with 2 inches. Now from that point, I'm going to be using my free hand to connect to the underarm, just the same way we did for the front, but this line is not going to be as curved as the front pattern. So it's just going to be a little bit curved, but not as curved as the front. So I'll just go ahead and use my pencil, and then I'll go ahead and also use my marker for better visibility, as you can see. Now after doing that, we're going to be putting the back pattern aside for a while we work on the front pattern. Now on the front pattern, we need to also draw some kind of a princess seam around this new style line. So I'm going to be measuring 5 inches from that point. I'll just measure 5 inches. If you check the picture of this outfit, you will see that there's a kind of a princess cut connecting from that point to the bust line. So I'll just use my curved ruler to draw this princess seam, first with pencil and then with marker, so you guys can see what I did here. So you're going to be cutting this out while cutting the dart on the outfit, and then you'll be joining it together back into that style line. Now the next thing to do is to complete our shawl collar. Now I will be measuring the back neckline, then I'll be placing what I have on the back neckline on the shoulder line right there in a slanted manner. See the way I placed my tape measure. So the back neck measurement is 4.25, and I'm going to be transferring that into the front neckline in a smooth transition. So after doing that, I'm just going to be connecting back like so, making sure that it's a smooth transition. Now the width we are going to be using for the collar is going to be 3 inches. You can decide what you want to use for your collar. Now after marking the 3 inches, I'm just going to connect it back into the first line, as you can see. So I'll just connect these 2 points together like so. Now after doing that, the next thing we want to do is to draw the shape of this collar. Remember, it's going to be an exaggerated one, and you can determine how big or wide you want it to be. Totally depends on your preference. So on the shoulder line, I'm going to be coming out by 3 inches for the width, which is going to correspond with the original width of the collar. So I'll measure 3 inches again downwards like so, and then I'll go over to the break point and start drawing the shape of this collar so it can connect with the 3 inches that I measured before. So on the center front line right there on the under bust line, I'm going to be going up by about 0.75 inch. I'm just going to be using that as a reference. Then I'll also be going back to the center front line, and I'll come out by 2 inches right there. Now from that 2-inch mark, I'm going to go up by 1.5 inches. I'm marking this out because I just want to use it as reference when drawing this exaggerated short collar, as you can see. So I'm just following the measurement. If you can do yours without putting any reference, totally fine. So I'm just going to connect these points together to form the shape of this short collar. Now after drawing this collar and being satisfied with what I have, I'm just going to complete the shape right here by joining this 3 inches mark like so. The next thing for us to do is to fold this paper so we can trace it to the other side. Before doing that, I'm going to be using my tracing wheel to trace the break point so it can be easy for me to fold this paper. So that is just what I'm doing right there. You fold the paper by the break point line or the slanted line, and then you trace the shape of the shawl so you can have it at the other side of the paper like so. So the next thing to do is to complete the shape of the shawl at the other side using my curved rulers like so. So just watch what I'm doing. I'm just replicating what I have at the other side. It's the same shape. And then I'll just go in with my marker as usual for better visibility. Now I'm going to come back to that part, and I'm going to be I'll be extending the width by 1/2 inch so that the collar can sit well on your neckline. So I'll just join the 1/2 inch back into the 3-inch mark, and then after doing that, I'm just going to connect it back into the neckline for the front, making it into a smooth transition just like this. And then I'll go ahead and use my marker as usual and complete the shape of this collar. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is just to label this pattern, center front and side front and the extension, and then you'll be placing your buttons wherever you want to place them on the extension. So after we're done with that, the next thing we want to do is to cut this pattern out. So just watch carefully how I cut this pattern. Now, if you've made it so far in this video and you haven't subscribed yet, please, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to get notified of my latest uploads. Thank you. So guys, I need you to watch very closely how I'm cutting this pattern. I already gonna to cut the exaggerated shawl. I'm also cutting at the side seam right now. I'm cutting the cut together sleeve, as you can see. So I'm just cutting the excess paper. Now I'm just showing you guys how the folding is going to look like by the time you are done. This is it. Now I'm not going to be cutting through the princess seam yet. I'm just going to cut through the style line around the underarm to the neck area. Just watch closely. I'm going to separate the sleeve from the outfit. So that's just what I'm doing right now. So when you put it back together, this is what you're going to be having. The next thing that I'm going to do is to label the front sleeve so I don't get confused. Now, after doing that, we are not going to be cutting through the princess seam yet to avoid confusion. That will be done much later. So the next thing we want to do is to move over to the back pattern so we can cut out the design at the back. So let's just go ahead and do that. And we have the waist that extends from the bust line down to the hem line. So after doing that, the next thing we want to do is the cutout design. So I'm going to be coming down 3.5 inches from the underarm right there. And after doing that, I'll also go to the center back, and from the bust line I'll come down 3.5 inches. That is how long I want the upper part of this blazer gown to be. You can decide how long or short you want yours to be. Totally depends on your preference. So I came down 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to connect those points together with my pencil. Then I'll also go in with my marker for better visibility as usual. So we are going to be cutting that upper part away. That will be the cutout. The next thing we want to do is to extend the waistline downwards. If you check the picture, you see that the waistline is a little bit lower. So I'm just going to be coming down by 1.5 inches from the normal waist. You can go lower if you want, maybe 2 inches or 2.5, depending on how exposed you want your back to be. But I came down by 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to connect that together. That will serve as the new waistline for this blazer. And then I'm just going to go in with my red marker for the new waistline right there, as you can see. Now after doing that, I want to explain something quickly here. The dart that you are seeing at the upper part there, for me, I'm going to be leaving that dart there, meaning that we are going to be having a little bit of excess at the upper part there. But if you want it fitted, you might want to remove that dart by the side seam. Just subtract what you have as the dart on the side seam. The next style line we want to draw is going to be coming from that part downwards towards the new waistline that we have. So it's going to be below the new waistline. From that part, it's going to be overlapping by the time you finish sewing. So from that part right there, I'm going to be going up by either 1 inch or 1.5 inches. And then I'll be coming down on that waistline as well before we draw our slanted line. So I'm going to be going up by 1 inch from that part. And then from the new waistline, I'll be going down by 2 inches. You can go down by 2.5 inches depending on your preference. Now I'm just going to connect these 2 points together in a slanted manner, as you can see. So you're going to be tracing that out separately on another paper. The next thing we are going to be doing is to measure the second part of the design, or the bow that's going to be at the back of this blazer. So from the hip line, I'll just go up by 4 inches from the hip line. You can decide how low or how high you want this other design to be. And I want the thickness of that opening to be about 2.5 inches at the center back line. Just watch what I'm doing. Now I measured 4 inches from this part, and then I'm just going to be connecting it together on a straight line. Remember, we are going to be tracing this out on another paper before cutting on fabric. Then after doing that, the part at the center back line right there is going to be sewn close before you attach your bow at the center back. I hope you understand. So after doing that, I'm just going to be using marker to further highlight this for better visibility. So I later discovered that I didn't want the second part, this part, to be straight. I wanted it slanted. So I'm going to be modifying this line that I drew. So here I'm going to be subtracting 1 inch from the width, and then I'll be connecting it down. I'll be connecting it down to the new position I want it to be. Remember, I want it slanted, not straight, the second part. So we are going to totally disregard this former line that we drew and follow the new line. And like I said, I removed 1 inch from the width, and then from this part I removed 1.5 inches from the former 4 inch mark to give us this slanted look. So I'm just going to be connecting these 2 points together like so before I trace this out on another fresh pattern paper. The reason why we are tracing this on a fresh pattern paper is because you are going to be cutting this separately before you overlap it on your back bodice. So what I'm just doing is making sure that the paper underneath aligns with the center back line before I begin my tracing. So after making sure everything is in place, I'm just going to be tracing out that shape on the pattern paper underneath with my tracing wheel. And then after tracing, I'm just going to be cutting this out, but before that I'm just going to label the necessary places so I don't get confused, and then I'll just cut this out. Just watch what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to label the upper part and the lower part to avoid confusion. This is what you're going to be having. This is on fold, but if you want to cut yours on fabric, it's going to be separate before you now join it back while sewing. So this is how it's going to be when you place it or overlap it on your back bodies at the back before you attach your bow. This is how it's going to look like. Now after getting that out of the way, let's just cut this pattern out. And watch closely how I'm cutting this very carefully. I'm cutting through the style line at the underarm connecting to the neckline, and then I'll just continue cutting the rest of the pattern like so. I'll cut off the excess, the opening at the back, then I'll cut off the side seam. As you can see, I'll label the center back and side back, and then I'll finish cutting off the sleeve, as you can see. Now after doing that, the next thing is to work on the sleeves. We have both the back and the front sleeve, as you can see, and we are going to be increasing the volume of the top and bottom of the sleeves by using the slash and spread method. So I'm going to be slashing from the top to the bottom to give it volume, to give it a kind of a bob look or a pleated balloon look. So on the top part of the front sleeve, I'm going to be coming out by 1.5 inches. You can determine where you want to place your pleating. So for the back, I'm going to be coming out by 1.25 inches. You can totally decide how many inches you want depending on where you want to place your pleating on the sleeve, on the shoulder area. So after doing that, I'm going to be transferring what I have at the other end to the bottom of the sleeve to give it a straight line before I demarcate it. So I'm going to do that to the back sleeve as well. Whatever I have there at the end, I'm just going to transfer to the bottom of the sleeve. That will serve as a reference for when I'm cutting or dividing this paper. So this might sound confusing, but just watch, you get it. So after doing that, I'm just going to connect the 2 points together using my ruler, as you can see. And then I'll also repeat the same process for the front sleeve. I will be connecting the 2 points together like so. Now after doing that, you just determine the length of your pleating on the shoulder. I'm going to be working with 5 inches. That will be the length of the pleating at the shoulder. So after doing that, I'll just go ahead and cut this into two, as you can see. So I'll be placing the front sleeve on a fresh pattern paper and adding volume to give you that exaggerated look. So I'm going to be adding 1.5 inches in between the two pieces. As you can see, you can go higher or lower depending on what you want. So after doing that, I'm just going to be using masking tape to hold this paper in place so it doesn't shift. And then I'll go ahead and through the line at the bottom of the sleeve to make it equal. And after I'm done doing that, then I'll go ahead to mark the 5-inch mark for the pleat on this sleeve, and then I'm going to be joining these 2 points together to form the pleat. And then I'll use my tracing wheel to trace the top of this sleeve. As you can see, that will make it easier to cut on fabric. Now after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this pattern out. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the back sleeve off camera. Now after I'm done doing that, what I'm going to do is to join these two sleeves together to make it into one continuous sleeve. Remember, there's no joining at the shoulder, so we are going to be turning these two sleeves into just one continuous sleeve. So I'll be placing it on a fresh pattern paper like so, making sure that the center of each sleeve is facing each other. You can see how I'm doing it. Then I'm going to be using masking tape to hold it down so it doesn't shift. Make sure the center or shoulder area of each sleeve is facing each other. Then I'll just go ahead and label the front and back to avoid confusion. Then I'll just go ahead and through the bottom of the sleeve to make it into a straight continuous line, as you can see. And then I'll go ahead and transfer all the markings that I have on the original sleeve onto the pattern paper where you are going to be folding your pleats. Make sure all the important points are notched or specified on the pattern paper. So I'll just go ahead now and cut this pattern out. And then I'll just go ahead and remove the patterns, the front and back patterns from the new sleeve pattern that we have underneath, making sure that we have all the transferred points on the new sleeve pattern, as you can see. You also go ahead and label your front and back on the sleeve pattern, and then I'll also be demarcating the center of the sleeve, as you can see. Now I'm just going to be showing you guys an illustration of the pleats that you're going to be adding for the shoulder, as you can see, for the front and then for the back as well. And then I'll be cross-checking what I have at the top of the sleeve to make sure it corresponds with what I need. Then I'll be cutting off the excess at the lower part of the sleeve, the excess paper. You can measure to recheck your length. Now for the pleats at the hem, I'm just going to measure 1.5 inches on both sides from the center line. And after doing that, I'm just going to fold together like so and then sew across on that 1.5 inch. You can sew up to 1 inch or 1.25 inches. I'm just illustrating by using pin to hold the paper together like so. So this is what you're going to be having after sewing. Then you have that design right there, the exaggerated bob look or pleated look. And then you just go ahead and sew the side seam of the sleeves. I'm just using pins for illustration at this point. So the type of pleats that you created at the hem of the sleeve is what you're going to be having at the top or the shoulder of the sleeve, as you can see. So you hold it in by 5 inches mark. That is the length that I'm using for the pleat at the shoulder for this sleeve. I hope you understand. So you can see the exaggerated pleated look that this sleeve has. It's not going to be coming out right because it's on a pattern paper, but on fabric it's going to look beautiful. So I'm just placing it on the front bodies or the front pattern so you can see how it's going to look when you join it back through the style line. You can see, so just place it back. You also be joining it at the back and then joining it through the neckline, through the shawl collar neckline. That is how you're going to be joining it. And then I'll just go ahead and cut this pattern out through the princess seam, as you can see. So you're going to be adding your sewing allowance back into this pattern when you want to join it on your fabric. So I'll also be cutting through the back pattern through the dart, as you can see. So you'll be adding your sewing allowance to join it back on fabric. So I'm just labeling side back and center back, and then I'll be bringing forward this piece that you're going to be placing or overlapping on top of the upper part of the back pattern, as you can see. So you'll be cutting that on fabric as well. So guys, on that note, we've come to the end of today's tutorial. This is all you have to know about this particular style. So if you found this video really helpful, please give me a giant thumbs up and please share this video to your friends. And if you are coming across my channel for the very first time, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button, and also don't forget to turn on your notification bell to get notified of my latest videos. So till I see you in my next one, guys, bye.